We see how the exploits of a Victorian woman from Teesside helped shape a nation.
She had a lot of equipment to take with her, not just her tent and her tea set in order to take her bath in the desert, but also...
She took a bath in the desert?
So she wanted to keep clean.
I'm Chris Jackson, and this is Inside Out. The region has produced many men of influence in the world, but also women. Hollywood star Nicole Kidman will soon be seen in a new role, portraying a remarkable Victorian woman who swapped her native northeast for life in the Middle East. Newcastle University professor Helen Berry charts the life and times of Gertrude Bell, a woman so powerful she helped draw up the map that created Iraq.
The Northeast, powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. A new era forged from iron. It made one family very rich indeed.
And it was into that family nearly 150 years ago that Gertrude Margaret Lothian Bell was born, right here in this house in Washington, County Durham.
Gertrude's grandfather was the industrialist Sir Isaac Lothian Bell. He employed more than 40,000 people across the Northeast. And it was the family's wealth that enabled this brilliant scholar and intrepid explorer to travel the world. Gertrude Bell was to become a formidable British diplomat, adventurer and archaeologist. She rubbed shoulders with Winston Churchill and Lawrence of Arabia, a truly remarkable woman in a male-dominated world.
When Gertrude was very young, maybe just 1 year old, her father moved the whole family here to Redcar. And it was here, in this enormous house, Red Barns, that Gertrude was to live on and off for the next 35 years, right within the shadow of the Cleveland Hills, where the ironstone had brought the Bell family so much wealth.
Inside, a luxurious family home. There was so much money in the Bell family that they owned not one grand home in the region, but 3. She honed her love of political argument here, Mount Grace Priory near Northallerton.
When she was at Oxford, here was a girl who had been unchallenged. Her father had been to the Sorbonne, he'd been to Edinburgh, he was a very educated man, he'd travelled. And I think this came to be part of Gertrude's character. Her father really allowed her to have her own way in most things. People did find it quite offensive that she would contradict them publicly without a second thought.
If she'd wanted to, Gertrude Bell could have stayed at home all her life and lived a life of ease and wealth. But her journey was going to be very different, and it was one that was going to take her far, far away.
On her travels, she developed a love for the Arab people as she visited archaeological sites. She learned their language and travelled deep into the desert. She became an expert in archaeology in countries rarely visited by a European. This was Mesopotamia, the land where civilization began, the site of the first cities of the world. Gertrude wrote books and took many photographs. No fewer than 7,000 of them are kept here at Newcastle University's Gertrude Bell Archive.
These are her own albums. She mounted these photographs as you can see them here. So these are some of the archaeological sites.
I understand that she went around in some splendour, with camels and gifts and guns and...
In order to travel in that part of the world, she took a library with her for a start, so she had a lot of equipment to take with her, not just her tent and her tea set and the kind of things that she expected to have in order to take her bath in the desert, but also...
She took a bath in the desert?
So she wanted to keep clean.
Wow. Gertrude loved to photograph people. I mean, she spoke their language, but I'm wondering how they received her. Had they ever met anyone like her before?
She must have been a very unconventional person for them to have met as somebody in the Middle East, as a woman in the Middle East, but also she was unconventional as a British woman. I think there's very much a sense that she loves the thrill, not just the exploring the sites and seeing new places, discovering new places, but also there is an element of danger.
The archive is also home to Gertrude's diaries and letters. They paint an extraordinary picture of her travels in the Middle East.
This is one dated November the 28th, 1918. Gives you a sense of the excitement that she expressed, writing to her father back home in the northeast of England. "Dearest father," she says, "I'm having by far the most interesting time of my life."
The letters also reveal a complex love life. Gertrude fell for a married man, Major Charles Doughty Wiley. This love story is at the heart of a new Hollywood film called Queen of the Desert. Nicole Kidman stars as Gertrude. Damian Lewis plays her lover. And before filming, Damian visited Newcastle to see the Major's love letters for himself.
He's obviously expressing his passion for her, and it's really reciprocated in her letters to him. She says that his letters are deliciously surprising and bewildering, and that he's amazingly heaven-sent. So, but this doesn't end well, does it?
He was part of a force that landed on Gallipoli in April 1915, and he was shot by a sniper.
Heartbroken, Gertrude immersed herself in politics. She became a key figure in securing Arab self-rule after the First World War, whilst maintaining Britain's influence in the region. With her in-depth knowledge of the Middle East, Gertrude was the ideal person for a key role in creating a brand new state, Iraq. And in Cairo in 1921, at a conference to fix the borders, there she is.
We see Gertrude Bell as the only woman in amongst all these male diplomats and senior military officers deciding the fate of the Middle East.
It's a wonderful photograph. You can see this real kind of colonial context. They're outside, but there's an oriental carpet. There are even a couple of lionesses at the front.
Gertrude lobbied hard for the new state to have a monarch, and as she so often did, she had her way. King Faisal was now to rule Iraq. But in fixing the borders of a state with so many different interests, did Gertrude do a good job? Today's Iraqis are divided.
We remember a person who was trying to design a map based on what the British interest was, not what the real people wanted to do. Her map has possibly brought to the nations, or some of the nations in the Middle East, catastrophes and miseries, and especially the Kurds.
She has proven her love to Iraqi people in many different occasions.
It's wrong to blame her alone. She was not the only one who created the state, the so-called Iraq, but I don't think it was a good decision. And the consequences that we see now are the testaments for that.
Is she a well-known name amongst Iraqis today?
Oh yes, both negative and positive.
How much do you think Gertrude Bell is responsible for some of the sectarian divides that we're seeing in our own time?
Well, I mean, if you see her letters and so on from that time, there is so much similarities of the same problems that have never gone away.
Gertrude Bell died in 1926. The Times called her perhaps the most distinguished woman of the day.
It's just amazing when you think of her influence and how well known she is around the world. But here in the Northeast, perhaps we still need to find out more about her. Her legacy isn't uncontroversial, but I think she was a very remarkable person, and I think she deserves to be better known.
The film about Gertrude Bell's life is called Queen of the Desert and is due for release later in the year. But time now for us to roll our end credits. Next week, former England and Newcastle United player Sol Campbell asks why the game has so few black managers. So I'll see you next Monday night. Till then, from Tynemouth, good night.